Sure. All righty, it is 5 PM. We will call this Committee of the Whole meeting to order. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doing roll call, all voting members are present. Is there any public comment tonight? And I will just say, if you have something to add to one of these business items, I think it'd be appropriate that you can come up during that item too. So don't feel limited now if you're not ready to speak, but you're welcome to if you'd like. All right, hearing no public comment, we will move on to new business item number 1.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Do we want to, well, first I'd like to point out that we do have a couple additions to our agenda this evening. And that would be a late addition of adding Illuminate Isani as a business discussion on E5. And then also adding the JPA, Fire District JPA revised draft discussion. We do have some members in the audience about Illuminate Isani, so if that's appropriate, we can move that item to number 1.
Sure, I'm fine with that. You guys all good with moving Illuminate to item 1?
Yes. Yep.
All right, sounds good. We will make that change. So let's just start it right off the bat. Let's go E1, Illuminate Isani coordination discussion.
Good evening, committee. We discussed this week as staff, and we were creating the agreement for the partnership between Illuminate Isani, the city of Isani, and Isani together. And through that creation, we just decided we thought it'd be in our best interest as well as the volunteers' best interest to really rethink how we're doing this so that we are making it a successful event for everyone for the first transition year at least and see how this goes. And so through that discussion, I know I reached out to all of you just to kind of explain our options and as well as met with Carla, one of the committee members, leading this charge and discussed a few of the options. So 3 options we have are really that regardless of that partnership agreement, this really still was being a city event, but we were really kind of half in. And so we just felt as staff that that wasn't the right way to hand this off, and we were potentially setting them up for failure by not offering enough support. And so in this scenario, the staff would take on a more of a coordination role by our Parks and Events coordinator. So maintain that and work with this committee to design the event this year. Knowing our parameters, what we've done, and like taking that history with her and how the park works, the electrical, all of the ins and outs. As well as, like we had discussed, have the Public Works crew set up the large display items, haul them into the park, maintain the repair and maintenance of the large items, as well as maintain the park infrastructure as we would, as it's our infrastructure. Plow on a first day like we have in the previous years. And then work on the regular coordination stuff, like they had requested that we post on our Facebook page, which you guys thought was still a good idea, in our website. And so that's still taking the same amount of time as long as the volunteers are helping us with creating those posts within our parameters and stuff that we require, which would be required anyway. And so this just really makes us go all in. We'd also still be likely on the hook for the funding of the bathrooms and items like that would be required, even if they weren't fundraised for, but we would require them in our special event permit anyway. And so this way we're just upfront knowing what that looks like. And so I did create what that minimum operating cost looks like. And so it looks like for including advertising, Santa Claus for 8 days, sound equipment, replacement cords, display replacements, which those 2, we spent less than what was budgeted last year, but we just want to be prepared for what those costs would be. The portable restrooms, which are just standard, not heated, and trash, as well as the software, which we budgeted for in our annual general budget for this amount, the $1229. A total of $15,929. And this doesn't include staff time, as you're all aware of. And so we had budgeted, it was 720 hours, and I figured after speaking with Josh Becker, it would be roughly 3 guys for a week to set up the large items and haul the stuff. So just for setup, so it's about 120 hours for that. And then we'd have to do takedown and then any maintenance in between. So without handcuffing ourselves by limiting the hours, I think we can really still limit the hours, but not define it so we don't have to come back and have a special meeting in a worst-case scenario. So this is one of the options that staff would like you to consider. The other option is we'd rather see it take a year off and canceled than fail. And so that's our second option. And so then we'd have a whole year to plan and work with them. They could get, if their goal would be to be a 501c3, then they could work on that and we could figure out how that works. If it's selling the stuff to them for $1 or whatever it is. And then the third option would be that we just set up the large items for this year and then let them take a year to figure out the event as well. But as you can see, like even us just setting up the large items will still cost us some of this money. We wouldn't be paying for Santa Claus or maybe advertising. We wouldn't need the restrooms, but we still would need to worry about display replacements and just repairs and stuff like that, as well as the same roughly amount of staff time as far as public works time goes. So just for your consideration, how would you like us to move forward with this?
So I do just have one question. You know, they have been raising money, and I'm wondering why the city would be on the hook if they're raising money.
So that money would go towards this, and so that
Okay.
fundraising, they could overfund this, but this is the minimum operating costs for this event this year. And so that fund would be created with this going into it, and that money would then cover those costs. So we wouldn't necessarily be on the hook once those, but we would be on the hook if the fundraising didn't come through. Does that make sense? And so worst case scenario planner here, you're welcome, but yes, that's what.
So to clarify, so after the expense, city expense, real cost, then we would give the rest of the donations to, okay,
It would stay in the fund, and then it would be used for future Illuminate Isani events, if that's what they're donated for.
sure.
And so, but it's starting that pot of money over as they wish, so it's the same way that we had discussed before, but it's just this year giving them the guidance that we can provide. That otherwise we're handing off, you know, just the baton and saying,
Good luck.
figure it out yourself, kind of. And we just don't want to, we don't want to do that. We don't feel comfortable doing that.
I think it's a good way to get them
Yes.
acclimated with what's going on there. And then, you know, they'll have their own ideas. They see kind of how things are going, you know, and I'm assuming, you know, like the Santa Claus, they probably have somebody that maybe they already know that can get into that. So that dollar amount comes off. You know, the restrooms, that's an ungiven thing. You're gonna have to have them. I'm for this so that I just feel if you do not do it, it'll definitely fall flat on its face from this moment forward. You know, it just, people say, well, what happened to it? Well, I'm not gonna even deal with it anymore. But this way they get their feet wet, you know, they're gonna probably have to have a little more of their own time working with, you know, the Park and Rec gal to really know what's going on here. I think this isn't a bad idea, and I'm sure if they're getting donations coming in for this, that helps offset this cost. You know, I look at it, and worst case scenario, I figure that we would probably be on hook for maybe half of that, if not less.
But labor as well. That's
Well,
the-
it's
yeah.
labor and well, it's city-owned property, and you can't just let anybody go do those things. It's just like if you have your own home, you just don't want anybody to come in and start doing things in your house without you being part of it, you know? I mean, it's,
My biggest concern is if we don't put an hour limit on it, I'm worried that we might be on the hook again for 700 hours. And then we have another year, a third year in a row where we're in the hole 50, 60,000 bucks. That's the realistic concern on, as far as a taxpayer goes. I don't want to see that happen. I don't think it will happen, but it's just, you have to think of worst-case scenario. And I guess, I don't know, it's just, we were presented a similar number last year about this is the operating cost, and then with labor in it, there's $60,000, $70,000, $50,000, whatever it is, and I just don't want that to happen again. So I'm in favor of it, but I would like to see us somehow put a labor limit on it.
Can it not be
Can
by
I
scope of
address
work
that
as
first?
opposed to an hourly amount, though?
What's that?
It could be limited by scope of work.
Sure,
So we will do X, Y, Z, not A through F.
sure.
I just think that $200, I don't think is out of line. But I think if there's an emergency that somebody has to come in, I think at this point, the city could front, it has to be an emergency. It can't be any other reason, then we would be able to take care of that emergency situation. Like the lights go out on the big tree. We have to get somebody up there to get up and look in the tree or whatever. So that would be my only caveat to that, is let's leave the $200 in there and put a stipulation, emergency only, that the staff will come out, but if they have to come out for a non-emergency thing, we have to bill accordingly to that. I don't think that's being unrealistic, and I don't think, I'm sure they're all pretty smart and have handy enough people to do some of that stuff, but, they're gonna have to get a lift in if it's something on the big tree. The city's almost stuck with it at that point. So, I think that $200, and then put a clause, emergency only, and then after that, it's billable hourly if it's a non-emergency situation.
Can I put my 2 cents in on this? I had a little bit of a conversation with Stephanie about this too, and I said, well, what is the real cost of public service? Did we have to pay them overtime since Illuminate Isani started in the first few years? If there are very little overtime costs, all we're asking them to do, which is unfortunate, is stretch what they're already doing and do more. And which isn't, it's not good for them, but if they can do it, I don't see where the real cost to the taxpayers is, because they're getting paid anyway. It's just a matter of, are we paying them overtime to do this event? You did bring up a good point about if we had to pull them away from something that they really needed to do because it's an emergency, like the light system went down, maybe we can come up with something like, after this 15.9 is paid through donations and there's extra and they have it, maybe then we can bill them for those type of emergencies to recoup some of that cost, maybe look at it that way. Does that sound reasonable?
I had
I'm not
mentioned
sure.
that in the last meeting too, just bill after the certain, so we set it at 200 and bill accordingly afterwards, maybe.
Right.
There's all sorts of different ways to skin it.
I don't know how many, Stephanie, you were there, how many times have we had to call Public Works during a situation like that?
Last year, we had one call
Right.
for Public Works, but we always had a seasonal worker on call, so it's hard to say,
Oh,
like,
Not
what.
on call, he actually was working the events
Yes.
almost daily when the event was on. So that's a little different, because he was able to troubleshoot things, and they weren't necessarily, emergencies can be defined in different ways, right? If the lights go out, is that an emergency? Well, maybe. Or, he was there and he was able to, if extension cord got overloaded, he was able to reroute the extension cords, because he was there addressing things, as well as Jessica was there, the parks coordinator too.
And he did a fair amount of that.
well, I can see then where this, kind of babysitting the first year, using that word, could really help you guys learn how everything works, and then next year be more prepared for anything that maybe happen, because you'll have an idea what could go wrong.
Well, and that's where I think that the council should look at this as, it's a partnership for this year. Because we're not handing over the baton necessarily, but working together with them. I'd like to see that the hours be put, whatever cap the council wants to set, exclusively set aside from the installation, the setup, and the tear down of the 9 large display items. Because
Okay.
depending on what kind of issues come up with the repairs that need to be made, if any, to put those large, like the Christmas tree, the snowman up, we want those to be up regardless. So as
Nick had said.
Nick had said, that's a scope of work. We're gonna put the big event, or big displays up, we're gonna take the big displays down. Aside from that, how many hours would you like Public Works to dedicate to assisting with the event, or Parks Coordinator, depending on, who is it? Define that instead, because we know as a city, we're partnering together to have the large displays up.
Sure.
That'd be my request.
Go ahead and just state your name and address for the record. Thank you for coming. Just pick it up and hold it, and I think it,
Whole thing, okay.
yep.
My name is Carla Anderla, and I live at 312 Flintwood Street in Isanti. So just a couple of things. So the total estimated cost for this budget that she came up with, we've raised already $11,500. So we're at that point. We have not reached out like Connexus Energy and things like that, which in the past have done $5,000. We haven't reached out. There was another one that we haven't reached out to that was also a $5,000 donator. So we're already at that 11,500 without those. So,
Great job.
So we have that. We also have some interest from like Joel Basie, who works, what does he work in the? Seasonal worker. He actually wants to be part of our group and is interested in donating his time, or like volunteering his time after hours or whatever, like, kind of thing. I mean, that would have to be a conversation, obviously, but he would like to be a part of the group, so.
Okay, Joel's
awesome.
awesome. He'll be
Just
a
wanna-
big asset for you
Joel
guys,
is quite
big
great,
time.
yeah. So, just wanted to kind of throw that out there, so.
Okay.
Sounds
That
like
helps.
Sounds like they got it on the right page. I think it was just, worded as a partnership. I still think, so Stephanie, would you say to put up this big displays and take them down hourly? How many hours?
I would say if we can give them 3 guys 1 week to set everything up that we need to set up and haul out there.
That's setting up and hauling out? What about taking down and hauling away?
I would say another week unless it's taking down is theoretically easier, but also putting things away takes longer, and we're gonna wanna make sure that we're there guiding them on how it's like a puzzle in there. And so I would maybe 2 weeks to put away, just because we will. Yeah, so I would say we would also need to help put away the small things, just so they fit the way they've been fit, like a puzzle piece, to teach them how to do that, and that's the Public Works that do that. So the taking down part, I would say, would be more timely, just because we wouldn't want it to be thrown in and need to build 6 more boxes of crates to fit.
So at a minimum, you're looking at 240 hours.
Yeah,
3 guys for 2 weeks, 240 hours.
yep.
Well, that's far cry from the other 700.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to the 240 hours, and if we got somebody that's seasonal that's been working on this thing, and he wants to volunteer and work with them, that's gonna definitely help out on those emergency things. I'm sure he's more than capable of changing out cords or whatever, and I'm sure they'll have enough money if one of them has to go buy a 100-foot extension cord or something heavier cord, I'm sure they could do that. I'd say that we should put a 240-hour limit on it. If there is an emergency that Public Works needs to come out, that's kind of that gray area, because they would have to come out as if it's one of the bigger items they have to use a lift on. I don't foresee that problem, because it's, when they set it up, they're gonna run it, make sure it's all working before they get done with the lift there. I think we should put a cap of 240 hours on it, and then go from there.
Can I make a suggestion too for these guys? Because let's just say, worst case scenario, they only get enough donations for 16,500. That doesn't leave much money left over. Can we give them some kind of guarantee, for minimum guarantee? I mean, they're putting a lot of time, effort, they got a lot of people doing it. Help motivate them to look forward to next year. Does that even,
But
does
you
that make
take that risk
sense?
no matter what.
What?
You take that risk no matter what, whether it's this or rodeo or BMX, you always have that risk.
Okay,
So that's just my 2 cents on it.
And one year is gonna be better than the next. I mean,
Sure.
last year was poor because it rained all flipping during the event. And it was shut down more than it was open because of the rain. And you gotta have it safe for people, so we have no clue what's gonna happen.
because I know last year we were talking about when it came to volunteers and paying them, that was on a whole different level. They were just volunteering their time being there. These guys are actually taking hours away from us setting it up ourselves and learning how to run it and everything else. So that's why the thought, it was just a random thought that just
But there's
occurred to
another
me.
difference is they're volunteering it for their 501(c) when it gets done.
Right.
That's a different thing.
That
We're
will
not
be done.
paying different volunteer. To me, when you volunteer, it means you're not getting paid.
I know.
Plain and simple. That was a really kind of a grayish area, and I do understand what Stephanie was saying. You don't get people to volunteer unless you get some kind of fundraising for them. You know, so, but this group is taking this thing on as to make it grow and become better and better and better, bigger, whatever. I think they know the risks. I think they've kind of understood it. They've sat here enough listening to it. I think they understand that. $1,000 is better than being 2,000, 3,000 in the hole. So I don't, and then plus there'll be donation boxes out there.
I think they're gonna do a
That's
better
true.
job with the
Yeah.
donations. Just, we kinda had a
Definitely.
rough run last year
Yes,
with it.
we
and
did.
I think it'll be better. I had a question, so if, say, we have this minimum operating budget and we expend all of this, say, just round it to 16,000, and they raise 20,000 total, would the city would be reimbursed that 16,000, they keep the 4,000 for their next event? Is that roughly how that would work?
We would still keep the money, but we would be able to purchase towards Illuminate Isani for next year. Does that make
I have a follow-up question.
So I think it's up to the council to determine that the money that they're fundraising is gonna offset these city costs. That's a council decision, would need to be voted on. But we could have the discussion, but if that's the way that you want it to go, that would need to be communicated within the agreement.
I think that's how I would like to see it, but I don't know.
I would like, you know, that 16,000 is gonna, you know, say 16,000, and the 4,000 rolls over for next year's thing, which they will, the city has the money, but it is earmarked specifically for that. If that 4,000 is an issue, we're okay, so the city would get $4,000 worth of lights out of that 4,000, and it goes out to Illuminate Isani, that's doing the same purpose at that point. It's just a hard thing for them to do, is because it's a city event, you can't just give that, it's very cloudy and congested in how that all operates. So, but it has to go to the city and how the city disperses it, but it's gonna be earmarked for Illuminate Isani, so it can't go to anything else.
Sure. Nick, did you have a question?
Yeah, for back of the napkin math, would you estimate Public Works employee time between hourly and benefits? That's like a total cost? It's like 50, 60 bucks an hour, somewhere in there?
I guess that would be at your
I mean,
discretion.
we do, I could do the math, however, our fee schedule does do a pretty good job of taking into the account, and we do charge $50 an hour if there is a hourly rate that we need to bill out. So it depends on how many years of service they've been here and such, but that's usually about $50 an hour
Okay.
with benefits.
So as far as the minimum cost, there's $12,000 that's missing if it's $240 plus whatever additional time beyond that, limited to the scope of work that we specify. So it's closer to, as laid out, $28,000.
That's why I think we have to make sure it's reimbursed for the operating costs themselves.
And they're saying they're already paid, however, that's time they're not going to what they've been hired for as their job laid out. They're not doing whatever other projects the city has, so I think just because it's not overtime doesn't mean we can say it's basically free time, because they're not being paid to play cribbage, they've got other tasks to do.
One thing is, though, it's that time of year, it isn't out mowing grass. It's gonna be snow plowing, which I'm sorry to say is gonna take precedence over anything.
Right.
And after that, there's only certain people that do the sewer and water treatment plant-ish stuff. So there's other guys that, you know, are just kind of filling in, helping here and there. So it's not like it's in the middle of summer when there's a lot of things that they can be doing.
I guess
That's the
Matt,
time.
I think Matt would beg to differ on that, because when I had talked to him and went and did the tour, they have this to-do list, and almost everything has to be pushed back until winter. So winter is when they do a lot of things that get pushed back through the summer. So they're always busy. But yeah, I get both your points. I think they're both justified.
There is
so-
always things to keep them busy. There's
Yeah.
upkeep on the plow truck, or one of the lawnmowers needs to be tore down. The lawnmower can wait a day or two, it isn't gonna make any difference at that point. So I don't think it's taking away, if it was in the middle of summer, yeah, I would say that's an issue. We have way too many things that they have to go out and do. So, but at that time of year, it's kind of a lull. There's things that they can be doing. Does it necessarily need to be done at that moment? Not really. But it's not like in the middle of summer.
Right, but if it's their time for maintenance, then maintenance is being deferred.
Right.
It's being deferred to another day when maybe instead of 2 lawnmowers in front of them, they got 3. It's not, to me, it's not like it's that big a deal at that point.
At the smaller labor rate.
If it was in the middle of summer, it would be really hard for them to take those hours to do. It's a timing thing.
So in this scenario, we would have the Public Works track their hours specifically, which just is kind of, you know, adds to their plate too, just tracking hours for if they pop in and out. But,
But we could do what Nick had suggested and just do it by
scope of work.
by scope of work, which I
That's
think,
what
scope
we
of work,
prefer.
scope of work plus 10 hours of emergency or something, with something realistic maybe, or do you not want to do?
I do
Because we don't, everybody has a different definition of what an emergency is, and that's the problem where, what if, you know, one light bulb goes out and it's called an emergency? Do we have any way for that?
In that scenario, Josco would be our point of contact anyway, our Parks and Recreation Coordinator for all, like, we're not giving out our on-call number to who's ever there. So she would be the point of contact. If she's not the one there that night, I'm assuming she would be there a night or something to make sure it goes off on the first time. And then hopefully we'd have leads who would take those other nights is the goal. Her and I discussed, because I needed to make sure she was on board with this. And if that were the case, then she would still be first point of contact, and she would be the one deciphering the next step. So it wouldn't just be an automatic call to Public Works.
And will she be on, like, for every night? I know, obviously, if you call outside of city hours, you don't have any luck. I mean, so she would be on call every night, or did she just agreed to have her phone for the what if?
Yes, she would be on call for those, but she wouldn't be, she's, you know, a salaried employee, so she
Okay.
would be available for those evenings that she isn't working and ready to make those decisions, what's an emergency or not,
Okay,
for those 8 nights. So it's not, you know, 20 nights, so it's 8.
Sure.
So it's less of a, and hopefully it's beautiful weather the whole time and there's no rain or ice.
okay.
Do you guys have anything to say about how the donation money is being handled? And, I mean, because you're doing a majority of the fundraising.
Well, my thought is the city worker hours, the 240 hours, I don't know what that equates out to as far as cost goes. Is that any different than the $20,000 that's allocated for the street dances?
For the
Could
what?
it, for the street dances? Could it be a certain amount of money that the city is allocating towards this event?
Right.
You know, that kind of a thing, like, and then we've raised above and beyond, or we've raised the other part of the money, or, like, it's an event that's great for the city. And we're proposing that it's an 8-day event, so, you know, is it different than just allocating a certain dollar amount towards the event?
Okay, because my question, one more question to you would be, the way I understood it here, let's say you raised 25,000 this year, then that the 9,000 would go back to the city for purchases next year. So
Yeah.
that was my understanding of what I just heard.
Yeah.
And you guys are comfortable with that this year? Can they have a say in what maybe we do next year as far as purchases and lighting and?
That be up to you guys, your discretion.
Yes.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. they
I
be.
would think you guys should have a big say, you're gonna be there all the time, so you'll have a feel for it too.
And it would be up to your discretion. They should potentially be allowed to spend it this year. If they raise $40,000 and they want to buy a, something.
Sure.
Space-saving light
Yes.
options. Keep space in mind.
Anything you buy has to be stored somewhere else. Just kidding. Travis, you like that one? Just kidding. Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'm excited. I think you're off to a great start, and I think it's really gonna go well, and I think the city, offering 240, 250 hours, whatever it is, whatever it ends up being for those main things, I think that's a big help for you guys, and obviously, you guys doing the fundraising is a big help for the community and everybody else, so I think it's a good plan.
Really
And I
appreciate
don't
it.
wanna wait another year myself. I mean, I think,
I think it'll do more harm than good.
I think so too, and this is it's kind of a soft launch. You guys can get an idea how it goes, and maybe it doesn't go as well as you plan, and you just don't want to do it, or you never really know, so.
Absolutely.
Any other questions or comments? Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you all I'll bring forward a resolution and agreement to the June 3rd meeting. So keep
Okay.
moving forward on that. So thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, we will move on to item E2, union negotiation representative discussion. Josie.
Thank you, Mayor and Council Committee here. We do, we have the last union negotiation meeting, and we do have 3 bargaining agreements within the city. They are all up for contract renewals here for January 1, 2026. We typically start doing negotiations anytime now, start as early as April of the year. And the last union contract, it was discussed to have a representative of the council be present during those negotiations. So I'm looking for direction of how we'd like to, that was the first time we've done that. So I'm looking for direction of how we would like to proceed for the next contract cycle.
Are they closed meetings?
They are closed meetings until there has been a tentative TA between both parties.
I think if we're gonna do it, I think anybody that's on council that wants to be involved should be.
I'll do it.
I would like to do it too. I don't know if anybody else wants to do it. That's,
I'm intrigued.
I would love to see more than one person, because then it takes a lot of ears and a lot of notes to really get details down and get back. And can they discuss within a regular meeting?
No.
It's
So they
closed
can't even
discussions.
discuss anything that they hear during the negotiations?
Correct, they're
To get-
confidential, all the discussions are confidential. Some can be shared with council, but those, one of the few state statute authorized closed sessions can be for discussing the contract negotiation strategies, but they don't happen in open forum. And so we would not be able to have a quorum of the council, because then that would require us to be open to the public. So we could not have more than 2 members.
so what does a person generally do? What kind of impact could that person generally have? I think Mayor Gordon had done it previously, correct? What kind of impact can you actually have? Obviously, I assume it'd be in our best benefit to have the strongest negotiator choice or choices.
Well, I really think it's a partnership between the union representative and the union team that you have, depending which union you're talking about, and then the city. And I think that everyone's working as a partnership to get the best of both worlds for both parties. So the union typically comes with their requests, the city comes with their requests. So a council member may have input on what the city would like to see for requests that they bring, and then it really is coming together and what makes everybody understand each other's side. So I think that someone who can be open and understanding to see where the other side, the other party is coming from, because the goal is not just to, butt heads and get the least amount for anything. It's really a partnership to see who can, see how we can move the city forward and everybody work collectively.
Give and take.
Sure. Jeff, did you have any interest in that?
When do the sessions usually happen?
They usually happen they always happen during the day. We've never had any in the evening, and it really has been based upon everyone's availability schedule. So the more people you have, the more difficult it is to schedule a meeting. Typically, there's 2 staff people. It has been the Human Resources Director, myself, City Attorney, the union steward, the union representative, and then if there's a council member. So that's 6 people that you're coordinating schedules with. And typically they're left, sorry to continue on that, typically they're left a little open-ended because sometimes the meeting can be really short, other times it can be 4 hours. So we typically do schedule larger chunks and blocks of time because we may separate, come back together, separate, come back together, all within one meeting time.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm out then.
you're out then, okay. So there's 4 of us potentially that would be
I'm out.
interested in it, huh?
I can't do it during the day.
Okay,
So it's up to you 3 to negotiate which 2. I like the idea of 2.
I do too, I think it's 2 perspectives.
Yeah, I think we should have 2.
Can council members hear the recordings before the 7-year time frame?
Can they what?
Can council members access the recordings before the 7-year time frame or whatever the time frame is?
The closed session recordings, are you talking
When
about?
they become public or when they're able to become public?
Well, no, I guess. Council, let me think about that. So if a meeting's being recorded, it is occurring in closed session, you're all present for the meeting. It's a closed session meeting. The union negotiation strategy meetings is client-attorney privilege. Those are not recorded.
Okay. How, just a quick question, how long are those recordings protected? Like, let's say this year's, how many years before somebody could listen to that meeting?
It depends typically on the topic. I'd have to look it up specifically for, if it's client attorney, we may not even record it, therefore it doesn't become public ever if the attorney's present, which usually they are
Okay.
during a union meeting.
I asked just in case these, whoever the 2 are, wanted to do some homework and look at 10 years or 15 years ago negotiations, kind of get a feel how it goes, so they kind of know what they're stepping
I've sat
into.
through many of them.
Yeah, we would
When I
not
was a
have
union
that.
member.
The strategy meetings of going back and forth and negotiating to get to a tentative agreement are not recorded.
Okay,
And that's, and I should just clarify, whether or not there's an attorney present, they're not recorded and they're confidential.
sure.
I mean, I don't know, maybe we just have George and Jeff write down 2 names that you want in it. I don't know, how else are you gonna do it?
What month are they scheduled for and about how long do they typically go for?
It's kind of a difficult question to answer. They have not started yet. They have not been scheduled yet because I wanted to make sure that I was clear on who was going to participate, so I knew who to schedule with. We do have one of the unions who's already, they have to put in a letter of an intent to negotiate. That has already been filed with the union. So we can start the meeting process as soon as we know everyone's schedule and availability. Depending on how long, I can say it can be as short as 1 meeting and you reach a tentative agreement, and it can go as long as many meetings.
So when do you plan on starting negotiations?
I would like to start as soon as possible, so therefore we can have, in hopeful, wishful thinking, that we'll have a tentative agreement be earlier on in the budget process versus towards the end of the year.
Do you think the negotiations can be wrapped up by the beginning of August?
I would not be able to say that, I don't know.
It all
I
depends.
I would not want to say that for sure.
Then I would recommend Steve and Nick. Not saying.
No, I
anything,
know
but
why, I know why, to take less time away from, I understand that, I don't mind,
Well, you're right.
yeah,
I mean, it's just,
it's fine by me.
I mean, because it is an election season and
You good with that? Okay, sounds good to me, unless you don't want it.
I want to do it, it's an open obligation, like I don't know how much time I'd have to miss from work. if it's a meeting, is that like 4 hours, or is it like a 2-hour block, or like, it's whatever it is, it starts and it goes?
Sometimes you go in and you, like she said, you split, so like the city would go off with their attorney and have a discussion because the offer was brought in by the union rep. We have a discussion, come back with a counter offer, they go back and meet, and it could take an hour on each side, come back and they meet again and say, okay, I will go for this, but I want this, so then we have to go back in and have our discussion on it, and then it could go back and forth. It could be 1 hour, it could be 8 hours.
And is there per diem, or it's just voluntary out of the goodness of my heart?
So in the past, there has not been a per diem for it. Council can choose to change that. When it was discussed last time, he did not take a per diem for it. So goodness of his heart, if you want to consider that, is how it was done last time. I will say from staff's perspective of scheduling, typically meetings are scheduled around 1 o'clock, and I do not schedule anything else that afternoon.
Okay. If we're to start at 1, I could make that work.
Like half-days type of thing.
Yeah, I can go in early and make up 2 more hours that way, and it would be a minimal offset.
I would like to have you on there. I think you're a good negotiator myself, so.
I like to not be a volunteer, but,
Well,
I mean, I want to go, but like, I think there should be, maybe, I don't know what the code is for that, but I think there should be some kind of rate for that. It shouldn't just be a donation thing.
I'm okay with authorizing per diem for that.
I'm gonna vote against that. I think it's kind of our responsibility if we're gonna volunteer for it. You shouldn't get paid, in my opinion.
Volunteering tonight?
Huh?
You volunteering tonight?
That's how it is. Yeah, that's what
That
code
job
is.
is pretty much a volunteer
Yeah.
job.
But, I mean, I understand your perspective. I just couldn't vote for it.
I'm gonna go with past practice. So, no. No per diem.
Steve?
I get paid salary, so it don't matter. I'm taking off work, I'm just leaving. I'm getting paid anyway, so. I don't try to take off any more than I have to, but I'm on salary, so.
Does that change your mind on it all, Nick?
I'm not salary, and I got 4 kids and the fifth
Right.
one coming, so.
Right?
Anytime I take away from work is time I'm taking away from my family's finances, so if I can minimize that, I can justify it, but if I can't, then it makes it more difficult. But
You still in?
figure out a way to make it work, I guess.
And if that changes, we could probably change it up. Can we just dedicate 2 people, and if we have to, we change who it is?
Yes, we could. I would just request that if someone was not able to make it, that we are permitted to continue on and not reschedule and wait for them.
Sure.
The problem is.
Continuity is
Problem is
helpful.
if he came, him or I went to a contract negotiation, and one of us couldn't make it the next time, and then you go to fill in, now you're way behind what's going on.
Sure.
It would just have to be him and I, and if he can't make it, we just need to keep proceeding to go along.
How about if for some reason before here in the first meeting, if you decide you can't do it, then we can divert to somebody else? Does that sound fair? But once they start, no diversion? I don't know.
I think you should allow alternates and just not slow it up. I mean, but having someone who wasn't there the first part might be a good thing, but I don't think that anyone else should be barred from coming in.
I
It should
do
be allowed
think it does build upon each other, though.
Yeah.
It's a give and take, so if we don't know what was given on or what we've, not to say folded on, but what we mutually agreed on, it is helpful. We do write it up, but the back and forth does build upon each other, meeting to meeting to meeting.
Sure. Well, Nick, if you think you can do it, start your day 2 hours earlier. I know
If it starts at 1 and not earlier, then I
Okay.
can cover the 2, and then I can try and make the rest up on Friday or throughout the rest of the week, but.
Okay.
Sounds settled to me.
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it myself. I mean, for you, I think you'd like it, so, yeah.
I love saying no.
What's that?
I love saying no, I just don't like being told no.
We try not to say no.
All right, and no per diem. Okay.
Okay.
All right, so that settles that. Ed, do you need a motion on that?
I
Two folks?
don't. That's enough direction. I appreciate that. But if we could skip to the County Road 5 discussion, why we have the engineer here.
Yes.
Just make sure it gets done before. Thank you.
Okay, so I had asked to bring this up, we got 15 minutes. I had talked to the county about, the repaving of County Road 5. I know it's a very common complaint we get is the condition of County Road 5, and people don't understand. It's the county that takes care of it, same with Whiskey Road, same with County 5, to the east of Highway 65. And we have had concerns about speeders on South Passage and Whiskey, and, 8th is a pretty bad spot on Heritage over by the school. And I think I would like to come up with a formal recommendation or a formal want list from the county. So that way it's never lost in translation what the city leaders think that the city needs from the county as far as infrastructure. The county, they might see Whiskey Road and they think, well, we can just repave that. Well, we've been talking about having, kickouts or traffic calming techniques. And I want that to be in writing so it's never lost in translation. Because when you have humans involved, things can get lost. So I don't know if maybe we just, work together to come up with, more of a concise plan written for what we think the county should address first, last, in the middle, what we think little tidbits on it are important for projects. And then also if we have, the county engineer come in once a year, I know Jason and the county engineer talk a lot, but just to have a little bit more communication so we're all on the same page. I think right now it's pretty good, but we need to pave the road for the future when, what if they have a new engineer that doesn't work well with us? Or what if county commissioners or city council becomes complacent or anything like that? I think we just need to have something in place that's like a guideline. So I was open for ideas, concepts.
Well, I don't know if you're gonna get the county engineer to come here, and I think the commissioner's gonna be like, well, just show up to a county meeting.
Sure.
So
Yeah, we
I
could
don't
do
know-
something like
I
that.
don't know if you'll get the county engineer down here. But I don't know if they would consider that stepping on their toes or not, but, I guess we can always make the list and hopefully it goes over well.
Best thing I can suggest you do is you get people that are complaining about it, they pay taxes in Isani County as well as we do. Reach out to their county commissioners and complain to them
Right.
and get them on board. What we do here, that their engineers they're not gonna give a rat's patoot.
I don't think that's true. I think Justin.
I know it's true.
I think Justin is very open to at least say we bring it, maybe he's not gonna originally think of traffic calming, like I just said, like Whiskey Road. He's used to working on county roads, well, maybe this one is a little bit different because there is a speeding problem there, and maybe he would like to hear alternative ideas that we might have that might be creative. I mean, it's always good to offer ideas, doesn't mean he has to take them, I don't know what Jason thinks on this idea, or, I mean, I know you guys talk a lot, but.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say we talk a lot, we
Or a fair
talk
amount.
on active projects and try and coordinate anything along, anytime our project abuts their project, and they've been pretty good since Justin's gotten there to let us know what they have coming, that's gonna be inside city limits. As for, you guys coming up with ideas of things you wanna see get thought of, it seems like a reasonable idea to put together a want list on Whiskey and a want list on Heritage, and we get it over to them, whether it's you're having me just bring it to Justin to say, hey, when your project's coming, these are things we're interested in talking about, versus you guys going directly to the board, the county board, to say, here's things we want you guys to be sure are considered on your projects. I guess that's kind of your guys' call, but at least ways, having our list put together to be able to make sure they're aware of them.
Right.
It doesn't seem like a bad idea, whether or not, yeah, it's gonna have any traction. But, yeah, right now, I probably have been talking to Justin more than ever, just because we have our Heritage Roundabout going on. We're also doing our mill and overlay that's butting up against the Whiskey Heritage Signal, so we got work going on there. We got our reclaim project on Isani Hills that are butting up against the county road. So every time we touch the county road, we're communicating with them And he's been doing a reasonably good job of letting us know what they got coming, but that's the only time we really are actively communicating, so that, you know, having a list to just kind of go over, whether you want us to meet once a year, twice a year, to just kind of re-up on those things, you know, that seems like a reasonable idea too.
Okay.
What is the proper channels to go through to let the county know what we think as a city needs to be addressed? I know we're a large portion of the tax base for the county, so it'd be nice to have a little bit of voice. Do we just go through our representatives, basically? Are those the ones you're pushing, you think?
Yeah, I think if you're thinking of things that you want them to spend money on, you probably would want to talk to your representative for each of the issues and where it is, and getting them to consider that,
Advocate.
just like you guys would be for adding a cost to one of our projects. You know, you're gonna want to have heard it as, you know, an idea that you want to be able to consider to add, and not just me, you know, as the engineer saying, we're adding this because I talked to this resident and they said we should add it, so we just decided to, you know. Those kind of cost adds, I think, would be things you probably want to talk to their, you know, board or whatever. When it's just a element of a radius on an intersection or something, that, like the design level, that isn't really a cost change, you know, those would be things that'd probably be more me talking to, you know, their engineer, you know, try and work out during design, as opposed to, you know, hey, we want to have this element added to your project, you know, when the county project comes to town, you know?
Okay.
Yeah, I will add to that. I don't think we should limit ourselves to just one commissioner. I mean, I try to reach out to all of them and get perspectives on some of these things, like the pole pads and whatnot, and it's just different. I mean, they're a county commissioner for the whole county, not just their district. So I think that's a good perspective, though, you know, reach out to them. And any other questions or ideas? This is just more to get ideas rolling. I didn't really have any hard goals, I guess, but.
How would the want list be like, does it need to be through a drawing, or can it just be a list of things we want?
It's up to us.
Okay.
So maybe just keep in the back of y'all's mind, and we can, you know, think about it and maybe come back next month and either work on a want list or, you know, I think the once-a-year update would be beneficial. I mean, I know you guys are talking a lot this year, but there's years you probably don't even ever hear from the county. So, you know, getting a once-a-year update from you, you know, through them, I think would be beneficial to the city council too.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a great idea, just to keep communication lines going. As for how to make a list, I would say go by each county road separately, and then because we happen to know that they kind of have a project that would be going along Whiskey, you know, as that as its own standalone thing, and then they kind of have a project that's the west half of town that's coming in a few years, and a project that's east half of town. So if you kind of broke it into those three regions, so that it's like these ideas are things we'd like to have considered when these different things are coming, you know, that'd be a good way to kind of categorize them. But, you know, because there's only two county roads through town, you know, it's not like they're gonna get that confusing.
When are they talking about doing the west side of Highway 65?
I believe that's in 2028.
That's the
But-
east side.
So
Or
that's,
sorry, the east side. When are they talking about the east side? Sorry.
on the east side, that's the one that I thought I had heard 2026,
Okay.
but,
So they would be planning that soon, if not now already.
yep, and Justin recently was at our pre-construction meeting for our project here, and he did mention that he's aware of our, you know, desires for that, pedestrian rapid flashing beacon crosswalk with a safety island at 8th. So he's already, you know, aware of that, and that's that exact, you know, wish list topic that's kind of made it through getting to him to not forget about when it's time to be making the plans, but
So I have a bigger recommendation for that. There's a property potentially that we have talked about a couple times, and it needs an access point, and the county only wants to give a right-in, right-out to that access point, and to have that accessible, you would need a roundabout at 8th, because a roundabout would not be probably allowed at this particular location, so it needs to be down further so people can have a right in, right out. So I guess I would like to get a recommendation from them ASAP to consider a roundabout there. You could still have your pedestrian island with the roundabout process, obviously, but I think if they're gonna be doing it in the next year or 2 years, they're not gonna come back for another 20. So if we want any sort of change there, I think now would be the time to get it.
So the type of project that's coming is more like a resurfacing and, you know, repaving project. A roundabout would cost
Right.
more than what they're even budgeted and funded for.
Right.
I don't know that it would actually, I mean, it would be able to tie to it, but I don't know that it has to be tied to what they're gonna be doing, because, you know, you're right, that once it's resurfaced, they're not planning on coming back to resurface it in 20 years, but to redo the intersection on its own schedule, they didn't really waste too much money just resurfacing through the intersection now, if they're gonna come back in 5 years, or, you know, at some time when they're able to get funding for that. Or,
Okay.
you know, once that type of level of things coming, it'd be like this one we're doing. We might need to do a mutual, trying to chase, you know, grant funds and teamwork, trying to get a roundabout done, as opposed to thinking they're gonna be able to just throw a
Sure.
$750,000 thing on, you know, on their system, just, you know, without a funding source.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's thoughts of discussion we can have, all those items, so.
Yeah, and on that, I mean, on that exact topic, it's back to the, if we're actually gonna be trying to move forward with a study or anything to get a roundabout going over there, well then, is it actually worthwhile to put a safety island in with the RFPs?
Right.
So, you know, there's an endless chain reaction of how far do you go now when you're hoping something might happen in the future? But, yeah,
And a roundabout is a better control option for that intersection, point blank. That's a dangerous intersection, even with more development there. That one scares me.
there has been some, I mean, I remember seeing at least a vague concept of a roundabout at that location, and I believe there's even some right-of-way corners trimmed off, you know, to kind of have room for one, at least some of it's already, the easement land acquisition that we had to do here has already kind of been done on that one. So it's possible, and there might be a master plan of it, you know, ultimately being needed, but yeah, the chain reaction, a study to finished product, as you see on our Heritage East Tool project, you know, that's how long these take, you know, so just to keep the idea of how long of a process it would be to get that switched over to a roundabout, you know, added to the current project, just doesn't seem too feasible.
So would it be wise to direct you to maybe ask him about considering a roundabout in the future versus paying extra money now to put in the pedestrian crossing situation? Would that be something that we could ask you to do, so that way he has an idea of it? I mean, I talked to him on the phone about it, but knowing the
Yeah.
pedestrian thing, I didn't know about that one, so.
Yeah, I mean, the only hangup would be then they would be less inclined to put that in now.
Okay.
And then also, it's basically the beginnings of the same conversations we had at East Tool. Do we want to teamwork on a cost share, on a study to come up with the recommended improvement at the intersection? And then from that study, do we want to teamwork on a cost share to go after grant funds? And, you know, a 3-4 year process has now begun, and absolutely can start that communication if that's the direction we want to go.
Okay. Any other thoughts or questions?
Nope. If you want a roundabout there, it's gonna be quite a while, I think.
Yeah, but would it make sense for them to pay, how much is the pedestrian crossing? Just a rough number, a couple $100,000?
No, I think the ad was gonna be somewhere around 100,000 with the island and the RFBs. I think we had, if I remember correctly, there was discussion of a cost split, 50-50 between the city and the county when we were asking for that back a couple of years ago. So, you know, whether that's still being talked about or worked out, I don't know, but that's kind of the level of cost involvement probably, you know, especially with inflation having happened since the original ideas.
Okay. So the city would be on the hook for part of that, and it might go away. It might have to be demolished in a couple years for a roundabout anyway, so maybe that's something that we should talk to him about as a council, or,
And we should probably, since we're on that topic, we should probably track back down what all the discussions were back when it first was getting asked for. But at the time, the city was specifically asking for it, and the county was saying, we'll think about it. And so I think that was the topic of cost sharing. I don't know what actually got agreed to or not.
okay. All right, so I suppose we can just pick this conversation up later. I don't think we need Jason here for that later. I think we got a good base. I would just take a motion to recess.
Motion.
Second?
Motion by Councilmember Holmgren, second by Councilmember Peterson to go into recess. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are in recess, and we will start planning